Hi, my name is Nick, and so far during the season, I've been going through all the Oscar movies, and I just thought I'd share my review for one of them, which is going to be for Nyad. Nyad is a biopic, or biopic, however you pronounce it, about Diana Nyad and her journey as she swam from Cuba to Key West. Yes, Key West. It stars Annette Bening as Diana Nyad and Jodie Foster as her coach, Bonnie Stoll. And they're basically the two main characters in this movie, and they do a good job, I think. Annette Bening, I think, plays a narcissist really well. I think she definitely encapsulates the whole energy around her, where everything in her life is about her, and she's very dismissive of other people. When she's told, hey, you need to go and talk to this other person and ask them about their life, she goes over there and she immediately just talks about herself for probably an hour. I really like that scene. I thought Bening was great the whole movie. She, to me, was someone who portrayed well the aspects of the sort of mind-numbingness of the swimming portions, which I thought was really interesting. And she kind of, I don't know, fit the role. I thought Jodie Foster was pretty good as well. She was entertaining. She definitely had the moments where she was trying to find herself, and she tried to understand if she even wanted to be part of this grand adventure. And that's basically where I stopped liking the movie. All the other aspects kind of annoyed me in a lot of ways. I did in some ways like the action shots, they were pretty good. But my main complaint truly is on, I think this film could have been really interesting had it not been Oscar bait. I don't think there's many movies that I know of that are biopics that really address the scandals that people are involved in. And Diana Nyad is kind of in a lot of them. For starters, she kept saying during the movie that she's the first person to do this, but I'm not exactly sure if she is, and I think she may have been like the second, which is still fine, but I think that would have been something interesting to address. The other thing that I thought would have been super interesting was if we got like an act 4 of this movie. So I think the first 3 acts, they're pretty conventional, pretty standard. You know, act 1 is the introduction of the character, introduction of Diana, and how she's, this great swimmer, and how she's kind of feeling lost in her 60s and how she wants to do something. And act 2 is the whole of her training to go into the backstory of what happened to her in her past. And then act 3 is the attempts. And so I think she had 5 attempts, and they're all shown the different ways that things were convoluted or maybe disrupted. Now, the big thing with Diana Nyad is that people assume and are starting to think that she is over-embellishing, or maybe she didn't actually complete this swim as she has said she has. There isn't any sort of full video of the swim. There's not, there's things missing. There's some inconsistencies with how fast she was going. There's a part where she was swimming like a certain mile per hour, and then she like really sped up, and then she slowed down again. And people are saying, oh, it's the current. But currently, the major outlets are not certifying this swim as something that actually happened. And so that's kind of what I would want a part 4 for, because it's been over 10 years since the actions of the film happened and when they shot this movie. So I think it would have been really interesting to go through like the rise of Nyad in public perception, as well as how often and how you deal with personally the issues of people thinking that you faked your swim. I think it makes it a lot more interesting because as an audience member, you're kind of left guessing to see like if she did it or if she didn't. I almost had more fun digging up the facts and all of this after the movie was over, because it's just hard to see in the movie how any of this is portrayed at all. Because in the movie, it's like, oh, she, went through all these trials and tribulations and she actually succeeded in her goal. But it would be really interesting if instead of it being like the normal Oscar bait, if it was kind of like what if she actually didn't do this? What if, she did it and she got like help by resting on the boat, or she got on the boat and then they sped off a little bit in the middle of the night or something, crazy like that. I think that would have been really interesting, just to say, like, maybe one of these things could have happened. But the directors for this movie didn't actually go with that approach at all. In fact, they made it so by the book and so generic that it was mind-numbing to me at the end. It was like, oh, of course. Like, whenever there's, like, they're trying to build up tension in these certain attempts, or they're trying to build up tension as she's reaching the beach and she's really struggling to walk. But it's like, yeah, it's not like you're going to have your main action hero at the end here just fall apart. Because that wasn't like suspenseful for me at all. I think I've seen too many of these movies, and I think we're ready to progress past them in a lot of ways. And that's really why I didn't like the movie really at all. Is because I think there's so many interesting aspects of her life that are just not covered in this. Like, they talk quite openly about, how there's a big gap between when she did her last swimming attempt until her new one. But I think it would have been really interesting to see what Nyad was doing in between, her deciding that, I need to do this grand swim. And the training montages were fine, and I think that's okay. But I think the movie really could have shined and done some more if they had, more about what she was doing as a journalist and how she was living her life in between these giant moments. I think that would have given a lot of perspective on who Nyad is as a person, as well as make her decision to start swimming more interesting, because the way that it's portrayed in this movie is that she just has this birthday party that she doesn't really want, but she sort of does. And that during this party, she's like, oh yeah, I used to be this cool action hero and I want to do that again. Like, that's not compelling at all to me. That it feels more like midlife crisis than I think what it kind of is, which I think it would have been more interesting to see her struggle with her life post swimming, but maybe really find, fulfillment in it. And then decide later on, I had this big mission in my 20s and I just never did it. And so now, before I die, let me try it. I think that's super compelling. And it's super interesting, too, because it makes you think, like who this person is someone who's had these different life stages and she's been successful in all of them. And now the one that she's remembering the most and wanting to do the most is the one she's the least successful in, which was the swimming. And it wasn't just like this one tiny swim. It was like a huge monumental swim in her entire life. All in all, I did like the movie until I didn't. And that's sort of my problem with it, is that it was good, but I think there could have been like an act 4 or even like an act 1.5 or an act like 3.5 that would have kind of broken the mold here. So overall, I feel like this movie really shied away from something that would have made it great, which is Nyad herself. And I think that because of that, and it focused so much on the swim, and the swim is interesting, like the action shots, they were pretty good. I think the way that they had filmed this was pretty decent. I liked how they did the Alex Honnold climbing the wall movie. So I think they nailed the action, but some of the parts that I wish that were improved were more so on the building of the full person. I think because it constantly shied away from all of the different aspects of Nyad, that for me, I would have much preferred it if it's tried to not be something just boring and conventional and Oscar bait, and instead try to be a movie that makes you want to think about it afterwards. Because to be honest, most of this movie, I was paying attention, but it didn't stick with me. What stuck with me was me reading all about Diana Nyad after the movie was over, thinking, oh my gosh, there's so much to this story here. It's like Lance Armstrong to me. Like, I think Lance Armstrong is so interesting to me because of everything that was aside from cycling. And I think those are the most interesting stories. And it would have been really cool to see on film. Instead, what we got was what I think is quite conventional, boring, and honestly, forgettable. Anyways, overall, I give this movie 2 out of 5 stars. And I'll see you next week. Bye.